Oh my gosh, come on. Hi. What is this? Is this what I think it is? Oh my god. Yes. I'm trying to think too. Are you from Boston? Okay. Oh. Oh, yes. Was it? Yeah. In Koreatown. Oh, I'm Savannah. Amazing. Yeah. So, I really never remember how I know people. I mean, I learned everything. Yeah, somewhere where we engage. Okay. Okay, yes. Thank you for being here. I mean, yeah. Oh, okay. Excellent. Yeah, we're so lucky to have it. Oh yes. Okay, that makes it all. It's all coming together. Yeah, I wanted to go that year. I had gone the year before, and it was so hard not to try to go again. But I was like, oh, it's fine. Oh, okay. And are we keeping like a top here? Is that? I think we voted yes. If he hasn't updated, because he brought it to us. I remember being in the chat. Yeah. Yeah. Well, let us know. We have to do it for everything now. We have to vote just so we get in the habit of it. So I'm like, there's little things that were like, no one's gonna say no, but we still just want to make sure we're habitually voting. Exactly. But luckily, we're all on the same page. But we just want to make sure that it's like it's hard. Trade off.
Can y'all hear me okay through this?
Yeah.
All right, as we're getting set up, just know that the bathroom is going to be next door. The bathroom should be not the critical jacket.
just wanted to try to know how to get. We still
Are you live streaming?
yeah. Camera's here. Actually, do you want to speak up a little bit just so people on the actually you're on
I'm trying to get rid of that.
I'm holding the seat right now. Oh yeah.
Okay. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. And nothing but ups to All Power for hosting this event. Yes. So as you know, we all have the honor of running a dialogue with CBS. Who many of you already know, but just to give a brief overview, this dedicated comrade has been theorizing so many things that I feel like have been missing from our radical academic lens, and in general, we're really like filling a gap that I feel like we have kind of left open for the past few decades, and especially from the Black radical tradition. So many things have been left open or entirely ignored, and your work has really strengthened and brought back to the forefront names that I don't think we often honor or hold. And so today we'll be talking about theorizing capitalist racism in the United States. But for those who are less familiar with you and your work, would you like to give a quick introduction?
Hi, y'all.
Hi.
For coming out to celebrate to see everybody on a Saturday evening, the evening in the world. I am a professor of African American Studies at Ohio State University. This year I'm on the fellowship at Harvard University in the Warren Center for Studies in American History, writing. My work, who knows? I don't know, y'all. These introductions are so weird. I don't know. I do work on Black shit, radical Black stuff, economic development, Black politicians, radical Blackness. I'm a member of the Black Alliance for Peace and Community Movement Builders. Yeah, and I strive to be a guerrilla. See, she did a way better introduction than I could do. But yeah, there's so much into it. I think we're all still digesting a lot from this book. There's been so many good books that have come out in the past 6 months that I'm like, boom, 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 boom. Like I had to so in the beginning of the book, you start off with terms that are been used repeatedly throughout the book to serve as a contextual framework that I believe and others believe are important to define, namely Wall Street imperialism, true Americanism, and U.S. Capitalist society. In addition to providing the meaning of those terms, what else in your work has led you to derive specific terms that you felt would be the most appropriate for this work? Yeah. So I can read these definitions. So for U.S. capitalist racist society and Wall Street imperialism, they're on page 15 for people who have the book. But I think instead of just reading the denotation of them, I would just kind of talk through why it is a term. So we are in a battle of ideas, right? So we are fundamentally in a battle of ideas. That is one of the most important tasks of right now, because especially in this country, the most highly propagandized country in the world, right? Is what given more money right now, but but by and large, the United States. And so part of what the ruling class does is force opportunity. And so for those of us who are jurists and intellectuals, on the so-called left, those of us who identify with revolution, our mission and our historical task, what we are accountable to is clarity, demystification, and being as precise as we can, because being able to describe what this is foundation to knowing what. So we, yeah, what can happen is people make up all these terms, and oftentimes they do it to have a sort of proprietary claim on knowledge. I repurposed and sort of terms in order to be very precise about what I'm describing. So, for example, I use capitalist racism instead of racial capitalism, because I am engaging in a different project than Cedric Robinson, basically, right? Part of what, when you have to write these books, use particular terms, you have to go through the whole literature, like how you criticize. I'm not very much invested in that project, so for me, because I'm talking about a particular enunciation of anti-Black racial oppression in the capitalist production, I use the term capitalist racism. That's basically what it is. But, and also, part of the definition includes like consumer exploitation. So I'm looking at forms of exploitation that are over and above that. So I'm actually looking at racialized, colonized, dispossessed sufferers, right? So those are the sources of my analysis, which means we have to look at super exploitation. We also talk about expropriation. So expropriation, so exploitation or super exploitation is a labor relationship. Expropriation can be a labor relationship, but it's also just taking people's plunder, right? And it's a particular relationship that's typically reserved on the bottom of the hierarchy. And then I talk about ongoing racial colonial primitive accumulation. That's important. So I get that term from a political theorist named Sidney Carver. That's important because Orthodox Marxism or classical Marxism talks about primitive accumulation or primary accumulation as a precursor to the rise of capitalism. But with ongoing racial colonial primitive accumulation points to the two things. Primitive accumulation, that is the ponderous, violent form of accumulation that includes things like enslavement and dispossession of conditions ongoing. It is constitutive of the capitalist mode of production as such. And then racial colonial, again, points to the fact that it is racialized and colonized people are typically those processes. And those processes are racialized and colonized people. So that's effectively, those are the elements of U.S. capitalist racist society. In terms of Wall Street imperialism, kind of Wall Street imperialism is the number one point out that the relationship between the state and basically private corporations. That those considerations can look different based on whatever the relation is. But there's always a partnership, especially in the case of the United States, whereby the ultimate goal is accumulation by dispossession. And it is a domestic as well as an international process. So that's one of the main constituents of imperialism. I talk about, for example, the exploitation of the U.S. North and the U.S. South that's fundamentally predicated on the fact that Black people were concentrated in the U.S. South at a particular historical moment, and in fact are migrating to the South currently. But because Black people were concentrated in the South, that meant that in a general sense, wages were depressed there, conditions were terrible, and then those conditions tended to be generalized throughout the country. So having terrible wages for Black people meant that all wages are depressed, right? Having terrible working conditions for Black people meant that all conditions could be worse, but you think you're better off than you are because you can say, well, at least we're not positioned that way, right? The other thing that Wall Street does is it
undergirds cross-class collaboration, primarily through white supremacy, but through plunder. So Du Bois talks about this democratic despotism, right? That the plunder of the imperial world allows for a lot of privilege for workers in the field. So anyway, to make this short and credit long, all of these, and then the last thing is like Washington imperialism and internal logic are the highest stage of capitalism. In terms of pro-Americanism, that's essentially, that is the it is that like the Red Scare is the stick, then like Americanism is the carrot. It's like it's a positive thing that people can pick up in order to belong and in order to try to distance themselves from the violence that occurs around radical Black people, around people struggling for Black liberation, and around people struggling for social democratism or economic democracy, as we call it now, not socialism or communism. And so true Americanism is, the idea that the United States is the most democratic, the most free, the most prosperous nation in the world. That as we time, the U.S. is less racist and better for all. And it's essentially the way the U.S. narrates itself in order to impose itself through both digitally and coercion on the world. And that's how violence, appropriation, and domination are legitimated. And it's how these are like the mythologies that the U.S. itself and imposes on the entire world. So those are some of the definitions, and I'm not particularly wedded to the terminology. If it's clarifying and useful to people, that's great. I've had the good fortune of sitting on a couple of political education sessions where people seem to find the terms useful. Another one is social location of Blackness. But if they're not useful, if they are convoluted or they don't work, then we designate and or we go back to old terms, because it's not about a mastery, right? It's about demonstrating right. We're trying to win, and so we need a body to do that.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I actually found that really helpful, and you're right. Like, we have to, in your words, organize, fight, and win. Yeah. So the win word matters a lot. To describe it precisely. And you described three types of Black radicals: the West Indian, the outside agitator, and the Black red / the red Black. What in your work and research led you to the conclusion of kind of defining these three different subgroups among Black folks and Africans in America? And then regarding West Indian, there are also, you mentioned public contributions of guerrilla intellectuals like Walter Martin, was Indian. What was the difference in imperialist and historical relations in the West Indies versus America or /United States, to better describe it, that led to conscious understanding of internationalism, anti-imperialism, and anti-colonial struggle?
Yeah, so I can start with the last question first. So somebody like C.L.R. James would argue that like the Caribbean is the first modern state. It's a laboratory for the rest of the world. And so the Caribbean, and then Walter Rodney talks about the Caribbean earlier, things that the for example, conditions of structural adjustment or conditions of neoliberalism felt much earlier in a place like that. What that means, and then a lot of imperial projects, imperial, colonial, neo-colonial, and racialized projects were left around the and so people, West Indian folks who migrated to the United States, especially as the century tended, and this is not tended to have a class and race and anti-imperial consciousness that made them particularly in the United States. And so, for example, the first Black agents who worked for the investigation, which later turned into the Federal Bureau of Investigation, they were infiltrating the Garvey movement. And part of what they argued is that the Garvey movement was formed West Indians were either ignorant and violent Garvey, or who were dangerous because of the that they had. Even though Garvey and the United communists, they still were regulated as such. Convergence with some of the positions of the nation, like anti-imperialism, anti-nationalism, and so what African Americans, but that's what it is, right? Some of the best ones were this radicalism is coming from like those who didn't belong, who couldn't or didn't take up to Americanism, etc. So that's one of the tropes that I look at in my chapter. The second, the outside agitator American, typically, oftentimes a journal editor who had profound influence over the Black masses. And they were dangerous because of that influence, because it was argued that their education made them dissatisfied with their lot, dissatisfied with their inherent subjection, and therefore they took up these radical ideas. And so the irony about this is that for an educated Black person, it's dangerous because you are going to espouse or take up radical ideas. If you are uneducated or illiterate, you're dangerous because you're susceptible to be duped by radical ideas, especially coming from the outside, like from foreign-inspired ideas or these ideas that are outside attitudes. So, the upside is if you're Black, you're dangerous, right? If you're Black, it doesn't matter what your station is. Always you have this capacity to destabilize the United States. And then there's the red, black, black, red. Now, initially, this term was called the nigger communist. But that is what Senator England called repression in the Senate, right? And so, but you do these books, people do these reports, and you're like, people will probably be offended reading that word, reading that coming out. It's a red, black, black, red. But eventually, this kind of actually with the Communist Party. The most capable of all, like, oh, Black, but you're also a communist, so you believe in social which is white nation. So you believe in engagement in racial organizing. You believe you're trying to update the economy, especially because you're struggling for you're trying to update the values of the United States because you're struggling for communism or socialism. So people Floyd, Robeson, I focus on alternative hunting, all of these organizers and institution builders who are like persona non grata for the USC because either are members of the Communist Party, clandestine members, or much of the work around the Communist Party. So how I sort of identify these kind of three tropes, they're not the only ones. They're the sort of type of the state, just to be state. And so anyway, side note, very great book that everybody should read is called Fear. Everybody I know mention this book, everybody should come here, same person. But he talks about technology reinforces this loyalty. And so like state documents, archival documents that are meant to sort of they're meant to not be representative of racialized radical people, but you read them and so that's how you pull out these categories was by seeing what was being said and then actually discourse about ways that people who were considered to be dangerous and loyal to this national security. That's chapter 3.
I know. I'm like, oh, I should have bought an extra one. I definitely appreciate this beer reference. Burden's work. I was like, dang, another book on abolition. I don't know if I can do another one, but this one I genuinely added something that extends way beyond we understand abolition. And I think your book also overarches this is war. Right? The same way that played out into the spheres. Prisoners of war, you expand that to a whole other level, which is this war, that's a site almost of a larger war. I think those lines were also complements your fantasy in describing. And also want to acknowledge, like, you know, the idea that the Caribbean is a place for security is makes a lot of sense when you look at things like the most advanced forms of accounting and financialization from Jamaican plantation. And so, like, again, when I think Dr. CBS like read this book, read that book. You know, look at the footnotes and everything that she's been citing. And so with that, can you kind of help walk us through why and how important it is for us as Black radicals and who we want to genuinely, materially engage with other people, or, you know, if you're not Black, you're not a Black radical, but how you can engage supporting international struggles and people who are struggling, like those of Haiti and Palestine and Sudan and Yemen. You know, in your term, Wall Street imperialism is really asking this question because, you know, Christian gold are literally sitting in Wall Street right now. So if you could just kind of gloss over as much as you could how that's important from your perspective.
Well, the reason of arguing out that Wall Street imperialism has a domestic and international component because the bifurcation of policy falls. So it actually doesn't matter because what happens with U.S. either. So again, thinking before, right? He says it's like what's practiced in prison against political prisoners and other incarcerated folks exported through imperialism to like the global South. And likewise, techniques used in the global South are used against incarcerated folks. Part of what I talk about in my book, one example is that people who fought in the Civil War went on to these expeditions in Cuba, in the Philippines, in Puerto Rico, right? But these are the same exact people. Then they would come back and then engage in like the Wilmington, North Carolina massacre. Right? Like it's the same people who do the same type of process happening domestically, internationally, which is to say that we have a stake in what's happening in places like Haiti. So we have a stake that about the Haitian revolution, but they don't care about what's happening in Haiti right now, the imminent invasion, the reoccupation, that is ongoing, that has already been happening, by the way, right? You know, they don't care about the fact that some of your favorite leftists, like Lula, right, like Congo, are supporting this invasion, and so people's radicalism stop at the shores, much like they stop at the shores of the African continent, because both spaces are normalized as dysfunctional, chaotic, sites of civil war, people who can't govern themselves. And so if we don't engage internationally, if we don't force international linkages, international relationships, then we're going to believe that propaganda. People actually believe this hype about gangs and hate, right? We know the biggest gang is the U.S. military, followed secondly by the NYPD, right? Fifth largest army in the world, actually. And so that's one reason it's important, so that we don't fall for this propaganda, because it's going to be voiced upon us through propaganda, right? You can't watch anything anymore without experiencing propaganda. Angela Bassett, like, military, there's nothing, right? Even to the point where, and what is that with Black Panther? FBI good. And what is the FBI good. Like we know that this is cap, but this is the we're fed. If you don't have a sense of what's going on in the world, you're going to believe it to your detriment, right? Because believing the hype then means you support these, for example, Nannies of Empire, like Kamala Harris, like like Stacey Abrams, like that capable lady in the UN always looking hella fucking stupid with her kitchen pressing curl, raising her hand, shit, like, you're gonna think that this is good representation. Like, we should be embarrassed by that, right? Thinking internationally allows us to connect, for example, like AFRICOM and the 1033 program. You want to learn about both? On the Black Nationalism website, because you'll understand the connection between Gilly and the IOS, right? You'll understand why there's striking similarities to how Palestinians are possessed, and then like these on next of racialized people here in the United States. Why there's programs like Gilly. There's a top city in every single state except for one. I think it's Montana. I keep saying Montana. I hope it's Montana. It's like one state that doesn't have a top city because places like Haiti and places like Gaza are not going to happen here. So, and again, if we don't have an international analysis, we don't care about what's happening elsewhere, it's not only that we won't understand oppression, but we also won't understand possibility, right? So we're supposed to believe that Cuba is bad. We're supposed to believe that Venezuela is bad or Nicaragua is bad. Now we can see all of those projects, but we also have to know that part of why they look the way that they do is because of sanctions. It's because of blockade. It's because these are smaller states in a capital economy, and there's always going to be particular malformation. And so, if we don't forge these international linkages, our minds are traumatized. The only thing that was possible in the United States is what's possible. The only thing that our comrades are these weird white leftists. But y'all be tripping. Like, these people who refuse to ignore that. So they're more in Palestine, but act like refuse to, reduce any attention to race to identity politics, right? But we know that we have comrades, we have friends in the struggle everywhere around the world, and that we're the majority. So, as I always say, that is why we have responsibility as people who identify as radicals, leftists, revolutionaries, to think broadly, to think globally, to expand our cartography of struggle. But that also includes doing work here. I do not trust people who only care about what's happening in Palestine, because if you can walk past a houseless person here and not give two shits or call the police on that person, but I'm supposed to believe that you really care about bringing up colonized people. It's like I just don't believe you, right? Part of how you sharpen your ability to struggle for Palestine, Haiti, Congo, etc., is doing stuff here, right? You have responsibility here. It's much easier to be able to tweet or post about something that's happening out there. It's way harder to talk to your neighbors, right? It's way harder, it's way easier to reach peace and she's great, I'm sure, right? Or Motown or these people, but you don't even talk to your neighbors. You don't even talk to your coworkers. You don't talk to people about what's happening here. So that's also part of the international perspective, is understanding the connection between like the local and the global.
I think that was a great overview. Yes. And obviously, if our role was not important, or if the lack of action was not important, the powers that be would not be so concerned about what you think. They are very concerned about what you think. This book is a testament to how concerned they are about what we think as radicals, especially Black radicals and revolutionaries. I feel like that actually rolls us into the next question.
Yes. But don't think too much of yourself, y'all. Like, nobody has the solution, right? Nobody's winning. A lot of times we're on our shoulders, right? Like I have me and my 8-person organization have the best answers. We know what to do. Okay, you have answers. I want to talk because we're not winning what I need to ask. So I think that what we do matters, but it also doesn't matter as much as we think it does. Somebody called like West left 4 or 5 studies. I think that's correct. And the weakness of the left is conveyed that we can't stop shit. We like thousands tens of thousands of people have been protesting, marching, striking, and yet the bombs are still dropping. And so that attests to the weakness of the left. That's not meant to be nihilistic. That's meant to be realistic. And so we have work to do before we can poke our chest out and think that anything that we're doing and not our resistance is making any progress. And we're not, that's misinformation. And again, remember, as revolutionaries, as radicals, as people on the left, we have to strive for democracy. So, just want to be clear.
Yes. I wanted to keep it cute. I wanted to keep it nice, but I think you're absolutely right. That we also have, I guess to answer this question too is like, you actually have to be useful to the people of Palestine and Haiti and Yemen because they are not actually like looking to us for freedom. They're looking like, okay, what are y'all about to do about your government doing this? More so than they're asking us to free them, they're asking us to free ourselves and get organized, to be competent, to be, at a level that I think we have shown that we have been at before. It seems that and a lot of your work revolves around specifically, anti-Blackness, anti-communism, and can you give us kind of like a brief overview of how this relationship became and how you think about it? And I will preface by saying there's a more legalistic judicial question, but just a brief overview, I guess, for people as aware of the general relationship.
Well, a simple way. So you got to start somewhere, right? So yesterday I had previously targeted by U.S. government, which actually I do mention them, right? I just talk about how the British got codified through the bullshit of the communist for the moment, and that part of the complaint everybody, ridiculous, communist, socialist, communist, I don't know if that's anyway, anarchist. Everybody as just undifferentiated persons, right? So you can start. I started at 19, the World War I moment, because 1917, the Bolshevik Revolution is the first time in history that we see competition between two economic systems, right? And the ideology and social relations that emanate therefrom. And so that moment is important. But you can go back to again, the first anti-sedition laws were aimed at anarchy in 1905. We go back to like the mid 1800s and look at the punishment of different socialist formations, and fear of they would have, especially German immigrants, right, and the fear that they would have on radicalizing not only white Africans but free blacks. You go back to the Alien and Sedition Acts of 1998, which were meant to they were meant to punish radicals from the French Revolution, but also radicals from the people punished in the United States with their enslaved from Haiti, who then were they would get radicalized like Africans on the So we can look at Berkeley and the United States and see the twin tiers of Black radicalism and anti-capitalism, right? Anti-imperial organizing. One of the ways I describe this is that, so on the one hand, communists were bad because they believed in racial equality alongside equality, right? And so the Fish Committee, or excuse me, the Dice Committee in the 1930s, one question that they would ask people to find out that is if they believed in social equality, which is racial equality, did they ever have a black person in the house, right? Had a black person in your house, you were a cop. On the other hand, part of the entwining of Black liberation and the socialist process is that Black people are Black people would benefit from economic redistribution. The bottom of the racial hierarchy from who running amount of surplus value are extracted. The people who you could just take their shit without recourse. It is an economic revolution. It's going to benefit like those scoundrels, those mongrels, those savages. Right? And so that's always, that's underneath the threat of an economic revolution. And this is why even struggles for like civil rights are red baited. So Martin Luther King called on this. These civil rights legislation was said to be like, that's what Stalin would do in the USSR. That's always that's there. And it's always political for any racial project that is tried because there's this fear that only that black people take over, that whiteness and white people subsumed will be divided, valued and be valued in the same fashion. And so part of what I argue, you can be a communist or not. I think you should be, or at least, but even if you're not, you cannot be an anti-communist. Because if you and say that you care about racial, colonized, racialized black people, etc., because so find that any type of struggle that overlaps with the struggle for communism is going to be seen as communist. Like we see it happening all the time. So in 2020, for example, when there was all these struggles for racial justice, even though they were largely right, aggressive, it was the Red China was funding funding these uprisings. Activism. There's this whole discourse about like Houthi and people's form being funded by China, funded by enemies of the United States because of peace activism. This was the same kind of discourse I was using to people like Du Bois and organizations like Civil Rights Congress and the Joint for Truth and Justice and the Peace Information Center. So all of that to say, part of the way I came to thinking about capitalist racism is through Black Scare and Red Scare because it's like, what are the two biggest threats to U.S. political economy? Black liberation and socialism. And what are the ways that these threats are linked? Black Scare and Red Scare.
Thank you. I want to dig even deeper into this. So I'm really current. I found it really fascinating how confused my classmates were when around the Board of Education was by deterrence of communism and the Soviet Union kind of putting that pressure internationally, and then also not believing that, again, Black radicals were acting on their own agency, aligned with the relationship that we're talking about. There's also, the Scottsboro Boys case, the Lee Church genocide doctrine. If you could first expand more on the significance of the Lee Church genocide doctrine, or manifesto as you described it, for those who aren't aware of them and their significance, and then also kind of how the legal framework, judicial framework has codified a lot of these, historic and then also current and ongoing efforts to expand McCarthyism, kind of consider it in different ways, but a continuation of it for this whole.
So, okay. The first thing I'll start with is Scottsboro. So Scottsboro is really important because there was a lot of legal precedent that came out of the Scottsboro case. One of which is like how the has a book called How the which is like fair jury selection. And the reason why we don't know about, or we know very little about Scottsboro, we might know about 9 Black boys raping or 2 white women. And so we understand it primarily through the lens of race, but what's really important about Scottsboro is took up the Scottsboro case and actually argue out the cases that led to, or the case law that we now benefit from today. So we'll know, for example, about Thurgood Marshall, the places we don't know about William Patterson and the ILD were extraordinarily important. The other really important thing about the Scottsboro case is that what the ILD introduced into these things was mass organizing. So NAACP was another cases, they wanted to argue it out, right? But the IOC insisted that is through mass organizing because we can't really get justice in the capitalist court. It's through mass organizing that we get true justice for working people because we have to draw attention to what's happening nationally and internationally, and we have to try this case like in the corner of alongside using peace. So the Scottsboro case really is, if we want to talk about the civil rights movement, we can start by not 1954, but we really can start in that 1930s because also 1932 was a case of Antiradical, which was also really important. It was the first time a free speech case was argued out through a black, not only a black person, but a black communist. I talk about in the text about that people tout that as a victory for free speech. But what I'm going to argue is that it's all branches of government that are involved in anti-communist governance. And the way that the Herndon case was argued out was very, very thorough, right? We didn't argue that, Herndon was charged under Georgia insurrection. And part of what the case said was that insurrection law is unconstitutional because it's too vague. What it also said was that there are plenty of laws that can be established that are already in the books that are not constitutional, through which you can punish communists in particular. So it's not this victory that we think it is, right? So that's for in terms of we charge genocide. We charge genocide is really important to what's happening now, obviously, because part of what it points out, so people started really using the term genocide in Palestine after 1947. That's not correct. What's happening is a war intensified genocide that's moving toward a practice of like extermination, basically. The genocide and extermination are not the same thing. One aspect of genocide is like the eradication of a population in whole or in part, which is like slow. And so part of what the genocide did in 1951 was take the United States before the Union with the charge of genocide. And it did this, number one, to galvanize a mass movement, and number two, to convey that the realities of Black people in the United States were that of genocide. It's not discrimination, it's not marginalization, it's not because people are mean to Black people and don't like them. It's genocide, and they have over 250 cases. That's from like 1935 to 1950. Mailing, torture, killing, and part of what they argue about, all of this was the foundation of all of this is political economy and imperialism. Something that they said, for example, is like the lynch rope and the jelly bomb are linked. So what's happening in Korea, at that time was fundamentally related to the politic and violence against Black people after World War II. The drive toward World War III was fundamentally linked to the carrying up of fascism in the United States after World War II. And so we charge genocide is really important to think about because there have been two previous positions in the United Nations to the Human Rights Council. This was to the Genocide Convention because it was charging the United States with crime and it wasn't asking for redress. Part of what the petition was meant to do was to bring this case nationally and to organize it nationally, not only for the fight of African Americans, but against U.S. imperialism. Because what happened to African Americans was a test case for what was going to happen globally. And I forgot the other question.
The other question is, I know you didn't get too much into it, but just in general, the Brown v. Board decision and all of the rights legislation that we understand as very liberal in implication and actual application, and really kind of just shut down.
The moral of the story about Brown, what we need to learn from Brown's Board of Education is that any progress that Black people make is totally reversible. And this is consistent with the experience that any progress, because it's codified in law or jurisprudence, it is wholly reversible. And so all of this is policy and law that tends to dominate Black politics, dominate a lot of even radical organizing. Really need to think about that. You sort of see the writing on the wall around Brown versus Board of Education, because the crux of that case is like that double test, which effectively argues that Black people see themselves as inferior because they don't have proximity to white people. Well, that's really not accurate, right? It's a question of political economy. Part of the reason why, so Bethany Hamer had a story where she said, growing up, she wanted to be white. They had food, right? They had access to things that Black people never had access to. They didn't live on plantations. They lived at home. That's an economic argument. That's not a psychological argument. Of course, there are sort of psychosocial implications, but to argue out that Black people need to be around white people to feel about themselves, that was a point was that separate was not equal, right? The point was that in a settler colonial slave democracy, you will never treat the colonized people. They're your source of exploitation, right? You never treat Black people equally. And so I think we need to take that seriously because Gerald Ford, who is a lawyer, right? He says that the law is the intention of their economy. So that means something, you know, and so again, I don't think that we need to cede any terrain of struggle, but we have to portion out our energy matters. And so I think that we can learn something from Brown v. Board of Education to the point where we had to get to another round two. I was like, okay, now you got this shit, like all deliberate speed, whatever that, right? So part of why Brown was possible though, because of what Eric Bell calls interest convergence, because so many states were decolonizing, and the United States wanted to sort of be, capture the so-called hearts and minds of the decolonized countries, and so it couldn't keep lynching people. It didn't have this durable system of Jim Crow if you are trying to be the leader of racialized people globally. And because the Soviet Union kept bringing up the fact that, the United States says that it's an arbiter of democracy and peace, but white people were lynched yesterday in the United States, right? And so it really was a pragmatic decision. It's an important decision, right? Like desegregation did improve the lives of many people, but at the same time, it was not the same that it's narrated to be by like these white historiographers, nor did it have a redistributive effect. So we have to be thinking about redistribution and structural transformation, not just recognition and representation. That's the moral story.
Thank you so much for that one. The cognitive dissonance that people have, they have in these doctrines, and without critical analysis and context, has to be continuously pushed back against and broken down, especially with the church genocide petition. Like, in the words of Malcolm, he says, you don't think you're to be criminal, right? If you don't get your justice in courts that will not give advocates and rebels the justice that they deserve, you can go with it, the criminal. And George James says, we have to bring this petition over and over and over. We have to keep charging genocide. And lastly, I feel like we talked about Dr. Gerald Ford. I think his on the Mount Harlem is really good, touching on what Dr. Stevens is talking about in terms of how that interest convergence came to be when, there was allegations in the Mount Harlem, even in other like you touched on as well, like foreign blackness of like the West Indians and even other people, like they would kind of give Jim Crow or segregation in some ways because that interest convergence, made the state we need to win this bigger battle, this bigger war against communism for right now. Dr. Horner, if you're listening, I'm right here. I'll be next month. But how do you work with the struggles of Africans as well as their resistance and perseverance in their own liberation? And of course, recently you have become a yourself. How does your work and some of us on Twitter, I didn't come up with it, we understand the struggles that African mothers go through this country.
Um, so, how does your work and knowledge influence your personal feelings about motherhood? I'm sure it highlights natural anxieties, also illuminates and fosters, a revolutionary mystic love. And, you know, just how do you think that your work kind of informs your approach to motherhood? How do you think motherhood has changed your approach to this work?
Well, motherhood means I don't do any work anymore. I take care of my child. No, well, with my problem. Um, no, okay. So one thing, and I said this a couple days ago, like I said I'm gonna write this thing called Revolution of Breastfeeding because breastfeeding is really important for children, for child development. It's something that is very prevalent in most countries around the world, but not in this, right? And I think it shows the importance of like large corporations like big formula, right? At a particular historical moment, there breastfeeding in this country is like almost zero because of the way that these discourses about how we ought to raise children are so dependent that if you breastfeed them, you'll spoil them, you'll coddle them, or whatever. Even though the best breast is best, as they say. If you don't breastfeed, it's just your reality. But there's so much that militates against it. Like, if you breastfeed, you're like balled up in the corner like a fucking troll trying to find somewhere to feed your child and a pump or whatever, right? Because most places don't accommodate it. If you're working class, you have to go back to work. If you ever even stop going to work, and it's super hard to like you work at like not even anymore circus. Arby's was always my. I've never even. Might be social version, but anyway. So can you even pump right? Like get one break or whatever if you're driving Uber, like you know what I mean? It's really difficult to do, but I think it conveys how we don't know about others, we don't know about children for real. We're forcing people to have, which is wild. Imagine this, a place that hates children and despises mothers, but is forcing you to be a parent. It's really wild, but it just shows where the nature of this society. So that's one thing. I think that the second thing is class really does matter, right? Race matters in the sense that it's proven that across the board, Black mothers have like more negative outcomes with respect to child birth than any other group. But I do think that class does matter, right? Because I think that me having a PhD meant a particular type of treatment. It meant a particular type of understanding on my part that I was able to take classes, and I'm a reader, so I read everything. That's how I was prepared. I was prepared in nothing else. Or sleep deprivation, but like so class actually matters, and it makes I'm just very much in awe of working class and poor mothers who figure this shit out with like no resources. And like it actually mind-boggling, right? And oftentimes when we become parents, I think it makes them equivocate on their politics because like the child becomes the most important thing. I think it has made me more steadfast in that this system got to go. There's just too much death dealing. It's just too inhumane, and it's not a world that I want my child to have to. And it's not the world that I want any of your children to have to. But I also think that it made me very critical of some revolutionaries who abandoned their family with children for the struggle. They are not antithetical. They don't have to be antithetical. That's up to you, right? I don't necessarily, it's not a judgment, but I think that many of those children are bitter. And we see the children revolution, their children are reactionaries because they felt abandoned by the struggle. And I think that it's important, family is important in establishing community, like your village is part of what it means to be a revolutionary. And so if persons were assassinated, they right? First, they consider it. So the people were just, they just didn't. That was not their priority. And so I'm actually heartened. I think that this generation of people, I'm like all my friends, like all my male friends, or all my father friends, not this doctor, they're active in some capacity. Like they're not all with the other parent, but they're all active in ways that like so many of my generation, we have them, right? And it's not because they all died, but many of us like had absent fathers. And so I'm really grateful for that fact that they're actually active and present. And not only in that, in some cases are for like they're changing lives, right? They're taking care of, they're not babysitting their kid, they are taking on responsibility. Of course, it's not across the board, but that's something I like because it just seems like not the situation, like the generational trauma, right? Where people are just used to being like fathers. With respect to trauma, like I think I said this last time too, like I don't use the term trauma because trauma assumes that things are just passed on inherently. I use the term repression because that describes a relationship, right? People are traumatized by stuff. People are traumatized by structures and institutions and individuals who are invested in upholding them. I think it's important to acknowledge trauma, but there's also that trauma is being used in a liberal way to evade responsibility, right? To disrupt, they the rest is not revolution, y'all. Because if the rest was revolution, the Catholics would be the most revolutionary. That's objective fact because they do the least amount of work. We need rest to wage revolution. We need joy to wage revolution. But these things are not like objectively revolutionary. We have to get out of that. We can't keep saying that shit, right? And we can't believe it just because it's said by somebody with all these things, right? Oh yeah, so I'm just all of this parenting stuff is optimal, right? Because but ending that, like I just really do believe it. Like it didn't snow in Boston this year. It snowed like one time in Boston. It's like 70 degrees. Like this is the hottest winter on record. Like I don't know. I feel like we're all super optimistic, and so it's like cognitive distance. We kind of go on with our lives as normal as if like it's like people look up. It really is like no away. But that, like shout out to Sankara. I hope she turns out very sad. By that if that happens, but I think my partner and myself work very hard to make revolution and then feel desirable for it.
Can we get another round of applause? I think we talked about a lot. We have a lot to think about. Just to give you a little break, because I feel like we have a lot of questions. But yeah, so it's 8:06, 8:11. Sounds like. Thank you all.
Please somebody take this person's cheeses. He's trying to get rid of these damn cheeses. Please take cheeses and he says they're gone. Cheeses. Yes. Please take a pack of cheeses and give it to somebody if you don't want. Okay.
Very important announcement.
I'm sorry that we were late.
No, you're good. You're fine. I'm happy you're here. Oh,
Just found out.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you guys are here. We always worry about like the everyone in
Right. not from the area, so we didn't know. Yeah.
Sorry, I think I am going to move this laptop.
I don't mind like even down to just I appreciate you asking about the chair
Oh,
release.
yeah, you know, it's like, you're sitting like this.
You're okay. Thank you. Yeah. It doesn't sound the same. It doesn't sound the same. It's kind of like, I don't know, yeah. Yeah. It's well, like, oh, like, I haven't really been exposed to it. Too much. Things that really don't, and their families and stuff. Well, one of them is 17. Everyone, very small family. But anyway, I've been around to both other than being like maybe short races, it's really hard. It's been also just like the cadence is different too. It's just like even speaking Spanish, like so yeah. I'm trying to. I'm like. Oh yeah. That's exactly what it is. I'm afraid of being part of something, and I'm afraid of like overstepping and doing something. I wasn't like, you know, modernizing law. Limited it, I made it. That's right. Like it was just I just feel like it's weird how I hadn't gone to other bombs that way. It's like
Alright, y'all. If people can start getting settled so we can get into Q&A.
Oh, yeah, for Q&A. Oh, which is fine. I think people say that. Yeah.
Savannah, do we have another microphone for the Q&A?
Unfortunately, no.
That's fine. I can hear you perfectly fine.
Even y'all.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Okay, so question?
I'm gonna do
No questions? All right, see y'all.
My baby's here, y'all.
Yeah,
She starts crying.
I guess just a really basic question we're talking about in terms of isn't resistance or revolutionary. And you know, when you're trying not to be combative with your friends or family or whatever, what are some of the ways to help massage that contradiction? And I feel like, you know, people start talking about the, you know, astronomy and, you know, the universe and, you know, we can all will our way into this great thing. So what are some of the ways to kind of combat that and have a conversation about, you know, I don't know what that question, but just having a better conversation with some people that you know, better than fucking like la la. Mandish.
Well, I am combative, so I don't have very much finesse. But I think that like with progressive resistance, for example, it's just asking people like, what do you mean by that, right? Like, I idea that people do that, like, was very about every aspect of your life. So there's some merit to the sentiment. But then again, using the example of well, oppressive revolution, the people who get the most press are the people who want to be reduction. Then are we revolutionary? And it's like, no, but, you know what I mean? I just think having like counterpoints is really important. And I think asking people kind of like, what do you mean by that? Or like, why do you think that is people don't rarely, I feel like, have to pause and interrogate why they believe it. They sit there, sounded good, or they just hold critical beliefs. So I think actually just taking the time to have a conversation is really important. Because that we don't often do. Right? In our bubbles and our like echo chambers, we don't want to have like this full conversation. I can be guilty of this as well. Say what I gotta say. But that's not the work, right? Like that's not I do think preaching to the choir is important because we are probably the truth, but also like we want to be right or we want to win. And if we want to win, we have to stop people unnecessarily agree with. And being as sort of kind and patient patience is a virtue, but being as kind and patient as possible. I also think, of course, I'm a proponent of reading. Oh, we gotta read, you know, and so combat liberalism is a good read in that regard. You know, finding anything from like good kindness, short, are good. Even podcasts, if something that people don't love to read, I think we should still encourage people to read, especially collectively. But those are all just some strategies. And there's just some people, unfortunately, that you gotta stop. Like you know, like everything's not gonna be with it. It's just a matter of like knowing the difference between like people who are your enemy. Move forward.
Yeah, so I had a question. I know earlier you brought up like Haiti and how people tend to idealize the Haitian revolution. I don't want to compare than people think it was. But basically, you mentioned how people, will idealize the Haitian revolution, but won't care about what's happening now, or even like believe some of that is like, Haitians are cannibals and people there and stuff. And so not able to defend himself. So my question is kind of like, why do you think like people idealize the election revolution but won't care about what's happening now? And also, why do they believe this type of narrative of the CBS? Is it just because of anti-blackness? Is it because they don't really have a reference? I just want to
So to the last point, I think that it is, it's not simply like anti-blackness. I do think that what's important is that there is not another reference, right? People don't have there's an alternative way to but I also do believe that people just believe that Africans are established. They do, like that. It's very plausible that he would be with this race game because of human incarceration, because of ongoing plunder, because of the Clintons, right? It's much easier to just believe that these are dysfunctional people who cannot govern themselves and they the ones to intervene, right? That's being true. And then, people's bias against, I would say, Black people here in the United States that form their biases about Black people and Africans elsewhere. But if the only images you're bombarded with are riots and gang, media literacy at all. Most people don't have functional literacy, right? Like, really, like, some of the 90% of our population is functional literacy. So we don't have influence classes and then when it is like when it is a particular group that has historic and integrated, then it becomes that much easier. But then with the Haitian Revolution, it allowed at least white people to do is to make something right to your responsibility. So if you were okay, the Haitian Revolution, yay, that's a lead, whoever. But then because it's something that happened in the past, it's something that that is open to imagination because we actually read. You want to say it, but because you know something happened in Haiti and black people free themselves, like then you can work on this imaginary without having to be accountable to the present. So I think those are some of the major reasons. I think it's not the Haitian Revolution that happened to you. I think people who want some type of radical, then they not a Stalinist, right? So there's lots of ways that this thing happens, or people just fundamentally live in history. They don't want to understand anything after, so they just say that this.
Okay, so the reason I came across your work in the interviews was talking about pre-Twitter, Charisse Burden-Stelly, Black Nationalism Burden-Stelly. We talked about your education, in which you like a lot of ideas made it over. Let's say, could you share like some of the things, differences between and stay listed now, and maybe some things that just make it possible.
Yeah. So with my dissertation, I never wrote my dissertation to write. Project. It actually was a series of different things. So, for example, one thing I really ended up about that whole argument about cultural that I so last year, Red Scare comes out of like the anti-radical, anti-blackness that I was exploring in the fiction. I don't think I talked about racial racial foundations of neoliberalism, but I didn't probably say. So the book is just sort of a refinement of the I have several articles actually basically, I took a detour. So I did like the boys book. I just did a whole bunch of other stuff. I wrote like half of another epistemology. Anyway, so I did a bunch of other things, and I came back around to this project because it felt like it was more pressing to get out right now. And then it's much more like my idea. Interpretation is like where you try to demonstrate, like when you have to demonstrate both mastery of several fields, and that you have transition from being consumer to a producer of knowledge. So this really quite different from way for other people's words that symbols which is why, by the way, this plagiarism thing that the right is doing is actually super effective because anybody who has written a dissertation, if they charge you with plagiarism, they will be correct. And it's not because you have actually plagiarized. I said this the other day, but it's not because you have actually plagiarized. Because the way that project is set up has so much to do with it. There's so many citations. There's going to be drop holes. There's going to be things that you miss. And so if somebody's looking at their dissertation, of course, there's going to be things that they can find, especially if you just so anyway, so yeah, they got me, y'all. They
It's kind of like a practical, I guess, question. So I'm a 12th grade English teacher, literature, and I just got your comment on like little and I'm curious
more like that accessible, because I think something can, for me right now, I don't have the capacity sometimes to read certain texts when I started. Yeah. It's like crazy. Yeah. With the five, yeah, with books. And it can be like nonfiction or literature, it can be like when yourself it's black.
Yeah, I don't know that I don't know that there's anything that fluctuates that I think it just depends on speed and what the, but I would say, because something about like what is that? Reading marks, you know what I mean? And so like I just don't think that it is depends on how we read it. Like UX education for the class that up to the 18 person there. I was kind of miseducation at the April was really important, but it was really accessible that helps people, that will help programs go on. Like everything you're right. Definitely like a practical skill that you derive from like math. The content is actually like not good. There's a lot of stuff I learned. I would say how you're going to develop access. It's not difficult book, but I think that it's written with accessible. I think Haymarket has a lot of books, like there's a lot of a range of books that I think are sort of written with an outlet in mind. Of course, organized like they're wonderful books. But it just has to be right. Something in that book. And I will say, Autobox X is a book that has brought more people to classes than I've ever met in my life. So, most stolen books.
Yeah, I'm going to make an observation or share an observation.
Sure.
I share your frustration on a lot of the things we talked about in the last 6 years. Yeah. I think if I were to take things down my gun, I would say with the pandemic, the death of people time has kind of numbed us to the kind of the atrocity that thousands of people died in shock. A 1% of the population has been eradicated, and we're like, we want to have a discussion about it. We want to have a discussion, But in a bigger sense, I feel, or it seems to me that the public are elected individuals to slogans. I think the problem with the rest of the revolution is it's a slogan. It's not really a song. You know what I mean? And when we reduce everything down to slogan, it doesn't matter if there's 10 people on the corner or 10,000 people on. If all we reduce that message to the slogan, then we how many people have already understood? They understood they don't have to do. You know what I mean? And if total eyes inside is what we can do is forestall it. We can't prevent it in an election, right? What's the hell is the point? So I see all these things. Frustrated. I don't have it. Too many names and too many people. You know what I mean? To get them to see that. And it gets awesome. You know what I mean? And I got the worst for somebody like you, or that's the taxing. I don't have it. So I guess I'm kind of some sort of advice, some perspective, or something to look at. All right, or do I just got all of this wrong? Am I missing all that?
No, I do think that there's a lot of sloganeering. I think that has to do with, for example, the very short attention span. people now, like the everything, the right, instead of being entertained. The rise of like the blog posts that replaces like longer form reading, 150 characters, like on Twitter, infographics, they're all things that I think are important for people who learn differently. It's really of a value, right? How we have to use that instead of use one in, right? So I do think that slogan, like catchy things are important, right? But I think you have to have it's supposed to be the use by which you draw people in. And you have to have something else, right? You have to draw people into something. And so I can't say that I have an answer. Like I said, yesterday, I had to answer these things like I would be dead. Because the state food, but I do think like being tired is real. And I think that we're not only tired, we feel like it's essentially it is true. It's a part of the fair life to which have been reduced. But I think instead of trying to talk to 300 million people, talk to 3 people. Seriously, like I think that the overlooked way is different, there's individuals that come and say, if I go out my vote test, or they are 18, for example, like from CSP1, they tell me that they use my vote as their debate. So, it makes a difference if you talk to 3 people and then they talk to 3 people. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like that small time that micro, this micro is important. They all like exhaustion, or it can help sort of, it's something that we can do in that context. So,
It's that's okay to do that. Wait, because it feels like that's still so small. That's I think what I'm doing how that is okay. That is sufficient for right now.
well,
For myself.
yeah, I think that 1 million people doing, 1 million people talking to 3 people is 3 million people. You know what I'm saying? So, it reminds me of what I was saying earlier about how people like put everything on Gaza, but nothing on the line for their neighbors, right? Nothing on the line for their neighborhood school, nothing on the line for their coworkers. Because the big just feels, because we don't take seriously, I think the small things. That's how movements are built, like each person by person, right? Just like you write a book like sentence by sentence. You know what I mean? It's like I think we need both ends. I think we need the big shit, and I think we need the small and I think that organizing is the way to make small. Yes, I'm giving you permission to talk to 3 people and nobody else can go home.
We were talking to, speaking of talking to, 2 people at a time and organizing. We were talking to a room full of young Black men, all of them from South Central here in Los Angeles. And one of them was very, not hearing what we had to say in regards to, abolition. And he was talking about the frustration comments and doing, you take away the police, but we still got to deal with the problems that we have here in the hood. It's like he said it, and I quote, and we were like, the whole Black, the worst generation of Black ever, and that there's no hope. They're talking about Black people have no hope. So your book about the location of Black, what is that? How does that help us to, that sentiment, in terms of the structural location of Black people versus like Black people?
Well, I think that, yeah, so like the structural location of private relationship, it's like the way that operate and how those things are like how the things the Blackness is not that, right? It's also all the other things that go into like the struggle to be okay, and I still believe that or whatever it is.
American humanism, I just, you know, I was liberal, whatever, European humanism, but I believe that full human, that's private, like, body of the philosopher said, right? It's a great question because I don't tend to talk to those people. I just, you know, because that's somebody who I don't know how to do anything. I don't know. It's so boring because I'm a cynical person, but I have, you know, revolution. I always have to be, as Castro says. So that's a great question, but I think I would start like, you know, asking it, it's like, well, what do you care about? Like, what is possible? Who are, you know, it's like black people, like, shit, okay, well, who is? Right? Nobody, like, then what are you doing here? Like, what's the point? You know, what do you care about? And I think that you can always find some sort of commonality, like, what you care about the family. Family's black, right? Okay, so then you, or at least a handful of black people that are working for. So again, it's about the scale, right? And I understand the sentiment about this. You can't even hear me believe that. That's just a random thing. But I understand that sentiment, right? Because the alienation is so down, right? The oppression, the internalization of the oppression is profound. Like the way that social relations are have ossified just a complete the way that social relations completely eschew like collective community orientation, that is profound. And so I can understand why people feel that way. But I'm sure that brother belongs to some community, a basketball team, whether it's a fraternity, whatever it is. And so that means you can't possibly do everything that you're saying if you have any black friends or any black friends that you don't care about. So I think, you know, getting at it in that way. But also, again, I don't believe like there's just some and that's a serious thing to say, and it's actually quite painful, right? But I do think that that's within the purpose sort of figuring out what that actually is, right? Because that's very kind of revolutionary. That's very kind of revolutionary ideology, which is pretty dangerous.
So I found your sort of state typology of Black radicalism in application the figure of the West Indian outside here, the Black Nationalism. And I was wondering how you update that for the 21st century. You do address this somewhat in the epilogue. Obviously, this new and about like wokeism, people-based theory, and all this stuff. But then you mentioned as well earlier today in the Q&A about like the dating of the peace movement and the that we see going on now, right? On one hand, what your thoughts are on like, the particular anti-Black dimensions of that, there is one. So obviously, since the demonization of Black Palestinian solidarity, and that's probably surrounding, Islam, basically Zionism, the sort of like terrorist in the United States. So I know it's sort of throwing a lot, out there at you, but are you talking about this?
Yeah, I think so. I think the outside appetizer and is probably still durable. There's aspects of I think about like Venezuela and Asian they're becoming like the new threat of the immigrant, right? At a certain point, I think that immigration was like Mexican was the figure of the immigrant. Now I think that danger is like Asian, right? Remember like war with at the border. And I think it's like Afro-Venezuelans, which is actually or Venezuelans, but a lot of them are Afro-Venezuelans. Now again, it's like the blacks here and the rest of the Venezuelans is a country. then these people are Black people. You got it good. Okay. So I think that's the whole like so maybe even the and the way that's racialized is and politicized probably relevant. I think the thug, right? I think the thug would probably be like a really big figure that's old and new, but it takes on new life. Because there's a long array of it, right? People who like critique or who fight the belief. So there, Hoover had this discourse that it's only for communists who, or it's communist propaganda to critique the belief because it's the communists who are trying to implement lack of faith in like U.S. institutions, including the police. Communists who are making up these lies about realizing Black people, they're trying to use Black people or to defy like to Americanism. And so that idea of the thug is kind of old and new, but it's repurposed to describe people like Stop Pop City organizers or 2020 Black people who are blocking freeways, blocking the stuff. So I would have to think about other ones, but I think that part of the durability of like the restoration framework is that you can really certainly get into it. I didn't say because the logic, the foundation, plus the foundation are the same. So if you think about the terrorists, there's kind of from the communists to the extremists to the terrorists, and even though the figure of the terrorist is different type of subject, the anti-communist state apparatus is really what else?
Oh, I guess it's the one like the dating,
Yeah.
movement and
anti-Black. I think so. So I think that the anti-Black dimension of the infiltrating has to do with so I know that for example, like my organization often target people like Marcus Kimberly and the private organization. I think it also happened. There's kind of left-wing component to this as well, whereby people are talking about people through the reality of Africa or of like the marginalized movements, and I think that plays into like state propaganda extremists. So the people who are just focusing on like Ukraine, for example, that we are sanctioned peace movement, whereas those who are like anti-Syrian elections or connection are the subversive. But yeah, I'm really like that for that. Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna ask though, I was used to the truth of that scared scared. I was one of the biggest fears that I could have since the kids. It was more of a danger. Less. I'm not sure if you covered that.
No, so I look at the period from 1917 to 1954, so I didn't talk about the Day of Revolution, but I think that's a great example, not least because of the close connection between Castro, with Eduardo Monblad, with Iggy Style, Mozambique, and Angola. And they all had a very close relationship in terms of what it meant to like wave the social revolution in the era of pessimism. Right? So it wasn't the 1997 structural that in, and optimism that the group of 77 would win. And I think that's a great example of like the
proximity to the United States, also to the point of being an English-speaking country, a Black country, and one that was committed to not only revolution in Grenada, but also throughout the Caribbean. So it's similar in Cuba in the 1960s, right? That coup, a similar approach to Cuba, right? Which also Cuba as an African revolution. So yeah, so that's great. That's really good.
But I'm actually kind of studying major of business, and so I guess my question is kind of if I could see it, I feel like balance is not kind of being for someone in academia who also participating the system and I guess my question was kind of like what like I feel like in African studies there's a substance I love them values from I think that's you know African studies and so like also I don't know I feel like it's a perspective and experience someone who I guess like what like you are being academic and being academic and people who remain very scholarship. What would you like to see more research so that it's not being part of these different someone like us from the different institutions also understanding
Yeah, I think that's an important question. And, you know, I always put Walter Rodney in this say two things. One is like he talks about being second, basically that, you know, I'm actually otherwise. So what I like to see more of is the proving otherwise. That has to do with like what that has to do with your historical past, right? Like who's responsible to. So to a certain degree, we also participate in these institutions that we have to live. It's really called, right, the cost of living, cost to live. So we all have to have some work in some capacity. But I think that as I, you know, I am an academic, part of how I see that my historical past, and it's part of the legacy of kind of thing. I'm trying to study and to bring together down in town, the university and surrounding community. It is the only discipline or the first discipline to come out of struggle. And then all of the other ethnic studies follow suit, as fact and witness, right? But it came out of particular sort of struggle in an effort to redistribute power and democratize resources, right? And I think that that's part of what I try to do, and that's what how much facilitated by belonging to organizations, having like outward facing priorities of doing things that matter to people outside of like the iron power and the power. And also I think like what type of questions do you ask? I think in academia rewards the very esoteric, high paid and irrelevant pursuit. One can do that because it's fun, it can be self-aggrandizing, it can be a lot of money. Oh, but you know, you can get a good living, but I think that asking questions that matter, and this is why what Black studies is questions that not connected to the other questions that we have are really important. So also, like I want people in the field to treat each other better and treat each other to actually be kind, collective, because a lot of these questions are in disarray. Like there's always these factors when people hate each other. They're really not kind to students. They don't talk to any adjuncts, right? Or any experience or potential faculty, let alone staff. And I think that that's terrible. Like, that's not the way. That's not the sort of legacy of studies. That's not
goals with that. That we all have to work. Like it makes the workplace somewhere like to go. It makes it as like human. I don't understand the other day like decolonizing universities. Like you can't decolonize it's just not going to happen. But you can make people ask you what people in the way that you right? So I think that's what we can ask of a job. And if you know the revolution is not going to be made, you think you're revolutionary to try to revolutionary things like walk like being realistic about what has to be done. Y'all think about it? I don't need you. I'm ready to go. Get your books signed. Make the point. Thank you.
Yes, can we get one last round of applause? We also, yeah. Being a father and before we close out, I just want to express how important it is that this is likely to do. So y'all can support All Power and NLA, like please do, because it could be as simple as like demoing or like buying some store or volunteering your time because nobody works here full time, as I understand it. And we're not gonna have these places we don't put the work to maintain the seeing like to have like big part in here, like I'm in a way that our all of our orgs, all our spaces should have capacity for families and out there, that for generations just grow. So I just want to emphasize that. But shout out to all of y'all for coming here tonight. Time, you know, we only do this freedom stuff when we actually come together, we actually make time, we actually choose to do something else at a time instead of, you know, another bar, another or inside of so we chose to be there because we you know, this important work that I think is Thank you all so much.